Hello, my name is Michelle, and the first time I truly understood, in my flesh, in my soul, what it meant to be disposable, to be thrown away like trash, without any value, without any importance, like an old useless object discarded without remorse. It was within the four cold indifferent walls of the house where I was born, the place that, in theory, should have been my safe haven, my refuge, my warm and welcoming nest, where I should have felt loved and protected, but which in practice became the stage for my first and most brutal life lesson, a stage of unlove and abandonment. I was cast out, unceremoniously, not with a farewell hug, nor a kind word, not even a single tear shed by those who should have loved me unconditionally. Instead, I received a miserable bag of clothes in one hand and a chilling, cutting phrase that etched itself into my mind like an epitaph, a cold, hard tombstone for my innocence and for the part of my soul that still believed in blood ties, in family love, to this day. You're too old to live here being a burden, Michelle. It was my own mother, Vera, who uttered those words. Her voice was as cold as a severe winter morning's frost, devoid of any emotion, any remorse, any hesitation. She sounded like a machine repeating a pre-programmed command, a robot without feelings. Beside her, my stepfather Eduardo, a man who had always been a shadow in my life, large and silent, a mute and complicit spectator, merely crossed his arms over his chest and nodded, a silent complicit gesture that for me was worth 1,000 direct accusations, 1,000 stabs to the heart for every drop of blood I felt drain from within me. They no longer wanted a daughter who, in their eyes, needed care, affection, a minimum of support, a place to call her own, a home. They simply wanted fewer bills to pay, one less mouth to feed, one less problem to manage, one less complication in their lives, which were already so full. It was a purely mathematical, financial matter, devoid of any humanity, any feeling, any connection. I had just turned 23 years old, an age when many are still discovering the world, making plans, living their lives with family support, and an abyss of helplessness opened beneath my feet. I saw nowhere to go, nowhere to turn. I had no money. In my pocket, my savings were non-existent, a complete zero, and I felt a hole in my chest so large, so silently, that I could barely breathe. It felt as if all the air had been brutally sucked from my lungs, leaving me empty, hollow, with nothing but pain. As I descended the house steps, one by one, each one seeming to weigh a ton, my heart shattered, glass shards scattering within me. Nicole, my half-sister, with whom I had shared so many years, so many childhood secrets, made sure to unleash a shrill, almost hysterical laugh, a sharp, cruel sound that echoed off the living room walls and directly hit my already wounded and bleeding heart like a guided, infallible missile. Her eyes gleamed with malicious pleasure, a sadistic and repulsive amusement, as if she were relishing every second of my humiliation, my fall, my despair. She didn't try to hide her joy in seeing me suffer, not for a second. Now you'll see what real life is like, Michelle. Good luck surviving with that face of yours, like someone who never decides anything. You'll need a lot of luck. She never understood. They never understood. I wasn't indecisive, as they like to portray me, to label me, to belittle me, to fit me into a box too small for me, into a role I didn't want. I was just waiting for the right moment, saving my strength, accumulating every bit of courage, every fiber of resilience, every drop of dignity I had left for my own time, for my own silent revenge, my own ascension that they could never foresee. Their time was over, and they didn't even know it. My hour was just beginning to be forged, piece by piece. With patience and determination, I spent the first few months sleeping on the hard, cold floor of the office where I worked as an assistant, a floor that reminded me every night of the harshness of my new reality. It was a tiny place, a cramped cubicle in the city center, with a persistent smell of old paint, dusty papers, printer toner, and burnt coffee, an aroma that clung to my clothes, my hair, and my skin, permeating every fiber of my being, constantly reminding me of my condition. It was an environment many would consider precarious, without windows, without adequate ventilation, without any comfort, far from any ideal of dignity. I curled up in a corner behind a pile of boxes, using my backpacks as a pillow, a hard, uncomfortable pillow, and my thin coat as a blanket, which barely warmed me from the cold of the early mornings. The city lights filtered through the cracks, casting strange shadows on the ceiling, and the silence was so profound I could hear my own heart beating, or the distant hum of the kitchen's refrigerator. But for me, that small dusty space, away from the voices that diminished me and the gazes that judged me, away from the cruel laughter and cynicism, away from everything that suffocated me, held something my mother's house never offered, something I deeply longed for and that kept me sane, lucid, functioning, silence, and peace. A silence that didn't judge my steps, my stumbles, my mistakes, my very existence, my failures. A peace that didn't demand payment for my failures or my weaknesses, that didn't make me feel guilty for existing. It was a refuge where I could, finally, think, breathe, truly exist, without masks. In that cramped space, under the faint, constant glow of an old buzzing neon light, an irritating sound, but one that became my soundtrack, I began to truly breathe for the first time in a long while. It was there that I could organize my scattered thoughts, free from the constant interference of contempt and condescension. I did my job during the day, absorbing every detail of how a business operated, the flow of documents, the negotiations, and at night, I spread a thin blanket on the cold floor, using my backpack as a pillow, and dreamed awake of a future where I would no longer be a burden, where I would be my own boss, where I would be free, independent, master of my own destiny. The nights were long and lonely. Hunger sometimes gnawed at my empty stomach, but with each dawn, the determination within me grew. Like a plant sprouting in arid soil, I promised myself, in an almost inaudible whisper, that this would be the last time I would feel so small, so vulnerable, so disposable. It was there, in that modest office, which became my cocoon, my dream laboratory, that I met Dr. Paolo, a serious lawyer with an impeccable demeanor, always impeccable in his well-tailored suits, neatly trimmed grey hair, and a gaze that conveyed intelligence and authorities. But what most caught my attention, what made me believe in him, and what he said, was his curious, perceptive, and attentive gaze that seemed to see beyond appearances, beyond my shyness, beyond my simple assistant's uniform, beyond my circumstances. He didn't just see me as an employee who performed tasks, a typing machine, but as a person with potential, with a mind to be explored. He was the first to realize that behind my reserved demeanor, my soft and almost inaudible voice, there was a strategic mind, a deep capacity for analysis, impeccable organization, perception of details, anticipation of problems that no one else had ever bothered to value or notice. He started casually with small tasks, asking for my help with simple documents, organizing files, digitizing old papers. Then, to test my skills, or perhaps because he genuinely needed it. He handed me complex spreadsheets that required meticulous attention to detail, and I completed them with an almost obsessive dedication, delving into the numbers and information, finding patterns and solutions that others overlooked. I didn't just deliver what was asked. I sought the best way to do it, the most efficient solution, the quickest and smartest path. And one day, to my surprise, and with a thrill of excitement, he called me for a high-value real estate negotiation, a case he considered particularly delicate and requiring a different perspective, a special touch. Michelle, you have vision, a keen eye for opportunities where most only see problems. You anticipate moves. You connect dots no one else sees. You should seriously consider investing in property. I will help you with whatever is necessary. With legal knowledge, with the guidance you need, I have complete confidence in your discernment, in your ability to make this happen and succeed. His words were like a balm for my wounded soul, like a sun melting the ice that had covered me for so long, a warmth I never thought I would feel again. He not only helped me study, recommending specialized books on the real estate market, online finance courses, and investment articles that opened my mind, but he also guided me through the first steps of this complex world, demystifying every jargon, every technical term, every bureaucratic trap that could have brought me down. He taught me to see the market not as an unattainable monster, but as a complex and fascinating chessboard, where every move counted, where strategy was more important than brute force. He saw in me what my family chose not to see: unlimited potential, unbreakable strength, sharp intelligence, and the ability to go far, far beyond what they could ever dream. Over time, I learned to analyze trends, to identify properties with underestimated potential, to negotiate with firmness and intelligence. And when I realized, almost disbelieving the radical turn my life was taking, the abyss I had crossed, I was already signing the deed to my first apartment, a place of my own, completely mine, no judgments, no demands, a physical space that represented my freedom, my new beginning, my first brick built, with my own hands, with my own effort, with my own merit, with my own sweat and sacrifice. I remember every detail of that day, the heavy pen in my hand, the smell of new ochre-colored paper from the certificate, the feeling of the ink spreading on the document, and the emotion washing over me, every letter of my name being written, no longer with the shame of being a burden to others, but with the pride of someone who conquers, who rises from the ashes, who becomes the master of herself and her future. It was a moment of pure catharsis, of liberation. I didn't go back to rub it in their faces, though the temptation, I confess, was strong, a persistent, almost irresistible whisper in my mind on days of extreme fatigue, in moments of doubt, the desire to see their expressions, to make them feel a fraction of what I felt, to make them swallow every word of contempt, every laugh, every humiliation, was almost uncontrollable, a flame that burned brightly, but I returned for a purely practical reason, a strategic move on the chessboard of my life, a carefully calculated and planned step, the fruit of years of patience and hard work. My mother's house, that very house that one day cast me out without remorse, as if I were a nuisance to be discarded without ceremony, appeared for sale. It was no surprise at all. I had been expecting it for some time, discreetly monitoring their financial situation, an old debt which they systematically ignored, procrastinating, living on the edge of irresponsibility, coupled with my parents' chronic, almost pathological mismanagement, their complete lack of financial responsibility, their disregard for the future, and presto, the property went to public auction at a ridiculously low price for someone who knew its true value, for someone who had the vision. They had no idea how to manage finances, living in constant chaos, ignoring the bills and eviction notices that piled up. I didn't hesitate. The decision was instantaneous and firm. With the discreet and crucial help of Dr. Paulo, I maintained absolute secrecy about my intention. No one, absolutely no one, suspected my plan, my strategy. With the profits from my first successful real estate transactions, which earned me much more than I had imagined, I had the capital. I bought the property in the name of my company, one of several I was already building with effort and dedication, without any of my family suspecting my involvement, my masterstroke. I waited for the contract to close, every clause meticulously checked. I waited for the documentation to be clean, without any pending issues, without any trace. I waited for the right moment, the moment when bureaucracy aligned with my plan, where my victory would be unquestionable and undeniable. And waiting, I learned, is a powerful weapon, perhaps the most powerful of all in the game of life. Patience is the virtue of winners, and I became its embodiment, and it arrived. That moment I had planned and rehearsed in my mind for years, through every night sleeping on the cold office floor, through every solitary dawn, through every moment of doubt and despair. That moment, finally, arrived on a Monday, a rainy Monday, with a grey, melancholic sky, heavy, dark clouds laden with rain, like everything that had always been somber and oppressive in that house. A perfect backdrop for what was to come, a mirror for the emotions that would be exposed. The raindrops gently tapped on the elegant umbrella I held. A rhythmic sound, almost a drum beat, marking the pace of my approaching victory. In a slow, inexorable march, I ascended the 3 porch steps, my new polished shoes treading on this damp cement, each step laden with an unshakable certainty, a deep conviction that coursed through my body. I rang the doorbell, the shrill familiar sound, that very sound I heard as a child, when I hoped the door would open to affection, seemed to pierce the walls and vibrate within me, like a bell announcing the end of an era and the beginning of another. Vera answered. Her eyes, before recognizing me, swept over me with the same indifference as always, with the same coldness I knew so well, as if I were a stranger, a door-to-door salesperson, unimportant, faceless. Yes? She asked, her voice still maintaining that calculated coldness, that distance that always hurt me, that impenetrable barrier she always erected between us. I took a deep breath, controlling the torrent of emotions that threatened to consume me, every bitter memory trying to surface, every word spoken, every humiliation suffered. Images of that rainy night when I was expelled flashed like a film in my mind, but I was stronger now, much stronger. I uttered each word with the calm, clarity, and authority that only time and overcoming can bring, with a firm, serene, and unwavering voice I never had in their presence. A voice that was now my own, the voice of my new identity. You have 30 days to adjust to the new rent. The house has a new owner. My words came out measured, controlled, without a hint of warmth. Her face, previously impenetrable and arrogant, turned white as paper, the blood seeming to have drained from her veins, leaving her pale and lifeless. Her eyes widened in shock, her mouth slightly agape, speechless. Nicole, in a faded sweatshirt and disheveled hair, looking as if she had just woken up or hadn't slept, with a coffee cup in her hands, appeared behind her, curious about the noise, and her eyes also widened in surprise, the cup nearly falling from her trembling hands. the coffee sloshing dangerously. Her laughter had completely vanished, replaced by stunned silence, by an expression of disbelief, and finally, of pure terror and recognition. "This is a joke, isn't it, Michelle? Is this a trick? It can't be. You can't be serious," she stammered, her voice breaking with disbelief, her body trembling slightly, the coffee cup vibrating in her hands. I maintained my steady, unwavering gaze, without a flicker of emotion showing on my face. A mask of indifference I had perfected over the years. Every second of silence was a victory for me. "It's not a joke, Nicole. It's the absolute truth. And before you say anything, before you try to manipulate me with words, with some flimsy excuse, with some memory of a past that no longer exists for me, I want to make one thing very clear. I didn't come to collect what you owe me, though I'd have every moral and financial right. I didn't come for revenge for every humiliation, for every cutting remark, for every door slammed in my face. I only came to do what you yourselves taught me, what you implemented in my life, what you forced me to learn the hardest, cruelest way, to charge for space, to charge for being a burden." My voice remained monotone, cold, each word a stake driven into their hearts, a precise blow. I felt no anger, only the coldness of executing a plan. They stood there, frozen, like salt statues, their faces locked in shock and disbelief, time stretching painfully, as if they expected me to change my mind, that the Michelle of 5 years ago, the Michelle who swallowed her pride and tears, still existed, the Michelle who sought their approval, who longed for a place at their table. But I hadn't changed. The girl they mocked had died at that dinner, and in her place, the chef, the businesswoman, the woman who no longer bowed before anyone, who had learned to value herself above any external validation, had been born. I had risen from the ashes of that contempt, stronger and more determined than ever. With a new skin, a new soul, I gently closed the door, the soft click of the latch echoing in the air, sealing not only the restaurant's entrance, but also the end of an era in my life, the last page of a painful chapter. I took a deep breath, my lungs filling with the delicious scent of my kitchen, welcoming me back, embracing me with the certainty of my purpose, of my place in the world. I returned to the kitchen, the familiar hustle of clanking dishes and simmering pots bringing me back to the reality of my world, the world I had created myself, with my own rules and values. That night, I served 50 tables, each one a celebration of my success, my effort, my resilience. I received effusive praise from critics who came from afar to experience my creations, and the next day, my photo graced the cover of a renowned gastronomy magazine with the title, "Sharon, the Flavor of Overcoming." They taught me to cook, with fire in my soul, with anger and determination, propelling me at every step, every seasoning, every new technique. But it was I who chose never again to serve crumbs to those who only knew how to feed me with contempt. And with every dish I created, every flavor I perfected, I celebrated not only my professional success, but also my non-negotiable freedom. The freedom to be who I wanted to be, without anyone's approval, without the need to validate my existence or my dreams through the eyes of others. I had seasoned my life with resilience, passion, and a pinch of stubbornness, and the result was a masterpiece that I was proud to serve to the world. And to my family, I had served my truth, cold and without any side. Dishes